What's going on, everybody? My name is Tyler, and today it is time for part number 2 of my top 10 NFL players by position series. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing the running backs. If you did not watch my top 10 quarterbacks video, first of all, I would highly recommend it. It's worth the time, in my opinion. But in terms of my criteria with these lists, I am not solely going off their stats from the past season. I'm also looking at their careers as a whole, whether or not they've regressed or progressed during their entire career, injury history in recent years, and whether or not, if I was building a team as a general manager, would I want these guys starting for me? So without further ado, all that out of the way, let's get it rolling. At number 10, we have Le'Veon Bell. First year as a member of Gang Green, New York Jets, did not go as well as Bell, the team, or the fans probably would have thought it did. Aside from the 2015 season where Bell only played 6 games, Bell rushed for his fewest yards ever in his career in the season with 789. His second fewest number of rushing touchdowns with 3. And this is the only season of his career where he did not have a rush of 20 or more yards. Bell is an electric running back. He's able to get into the second level, into the secondary, past the front 7. This year he just wasn't able to do that. His longest run of the year was 19 yards, which is just uncharacteristic for him. Excuse me. Bell is also considered one of the best receiving backs in the entire NFL. But he had his fewest number of catches, yards, and touchdowns since his rookie season, aside from, once again, that 2015 season, with 66 catches, 461 yards, and only 1 receiving touchdown. Bell had many people, including myself, scratching our heads because he made it very clear he wanted his money, sitting out the entire 2018 season with the Steelers. He got his payday from the Jets. They took a huge risk in signing him. And you would have thought, okay, Bell would be motivated to perform at such a high level, but he didn't. And you thought all the headaches would be over. But with Bell, they haven't seemed to have gone away, and his poor play certainly is not helping. If Bell was playing out of his mind like he was those first couple of years as a Steeler, people I don't think would have as much of an issue with the off-the-field headaches. But they haven't seemed to have gone away. Like, one thing from this past season, Bell was seen bowling after missing a game due to the flu, or due to an illness of some sort. He was bowling the night before and was out of the next game with the illness. It was just very odd. It was very peculiar. But for a guy who's considered one of the best in the league, it's just been a horrible season for him. And you might be wondering why I have him in my top 10, and the answer is really threefold. The first is that Bell as a talent is one of the best in the league. And from what I have seen from his days in Pittsburgh, I believe that he still has the ability to perform at a much higher level than that he did this season. The second is that the Jets' offensive line was shuffled around a lot this past season due to injury. So because of this, the quality of play from the O-line was far worse than it probably could have been. Yes, Bell is an elite talent, he should be able to perform with any quality offensive line. And these are all NFL offensive linemen, so they're the best of the best. But there are some, when you have your starting linemen out due to injury, and you're putting in backups or guys who haven't played as much, the whole team's going to suffer on the offensive end. And finally, compared to the Steelers, the Jets do not have the same passing game. Sam Darnold is certainly no Ben Roethlisberger. Jameson Crowder and Robbie Anderson together don't add up to the talent level of that of Antonio Brown. And because of this, defenses don't fear the passing game with the Jets as much, and they are able to key in on Le'Veon Bell. With all that being said, I do hope Bell and the Jets turn things around for both of their sakes, as well as Jets fans. I have a lot of friends who are Jets fans, and they just were appalled to see what this past season was for Le'Veon Bell and the team. And also, the Jets took a huge risk, as I mentioned. They guaranteed Le'Veon Bell $35 million, giving him the opportunity to earn up to $61 million. And Bell is an immense talent, as I said. I would hate to see him wither away in a Jets uniform. But as of right now, I have to put Le'Veon Bell as my number 10 running back in the NFL. At number 9, we have Todd Gurley. Gurley, ironically, is probably the biggest question mark to me of all the guys on this list, strictly because of how the Rams have used him from time to time the last year and a half or so. One game, Gurley gets 25 carries and rushes for 97 yards. The next, he only gets 6 carries and rushes for 22 yards. And that actually happened this season. The former was against the Bears, the latter against Baltimore. And I know in the Baltimore game for the Rams, it was just an abysmal offensive performance entirely. But for Gurley, he had 7 games this season where he received fewer than 15 carries. In the 58 games he has played prior to this season, Gurley only had 17 games where he saw 15 carries for us. And I'm no mathematician, but 7 is about 50%, about half of 15. 17 is not half of 58. So something is clearly up with Gurley. And I think that partially has to do to the fact that defenses are understanding Sean McVay's offense, and they've realized how to shut down the passing game, and by default, shutting down the running game. Gurley did rush for 12 touchdowns this season, good enough for 5th in the NFL, but like Bell saw a dip in yards, rushing for 857 this year versus 1,251 last season. I think the Sean McVay system has to evolve. Gurley should be the centerpiece of this offense because Jared Goff simply is not an elite enough quarterback to lead this offense. I think Gurley has to be the main focal point, or at least something. The Rams got to change their offense around somewhat because defense is starting to figure out, and if they don't evolve, it's going to be a rough next couple of years in LA. And they're moving to that new stadium, and I think Gurley should be the main focal point. Also, like Bell, Gurley is a special talent, and I hate to see it get wasted away on a team that doesn't utilize him properly. And he received a huge payday from the Rams. He and Jared Goff. So if I were the Rams, I would be like, hey, we paid this guy a lot of money. You got to use him a little bit better. If I was the front office talking to Sean McVay and the offensive coaching staff. Do I see Gurley turning it around? Yes. But the Rams offense, I do think, needs to be tweaked a little bit to create more opportunities for him. So Todd Gurley, I have as my number 9 running back. At number 8, we have Leonard Fournette. Fournette is another interesting case. In his 3rd year, he rushed for his most yards of his career with 1,152, good enough for 7th in the NFL. But also rushed for his fewest number of touchdowns with 3. And that's all while playing the most games he ever has in a season yet, playing 15 out of 16 games. Fournette, although not known for his abilities as a pass catcher, recorded his highest number of catches and receiving yards this past season with 76 and 522 respectively. And it seems that there's going to be a culture shift in Jacksonville. With the firing of Tom Coughlin, whom I have heard he and Fournette butted heads from time to time, I think the opportunity for Fournette to continue to grow and thrive is there. And I think Doug Marrone wants to be a ground and pound team, especially with the question marks at quarterback. Nick Foles, we don't know if he's going to be the starter next year, or will it be Gardner Minshew. They're going to have to rely on Fournette to alleviate some of the pressure that whoever is starting a quarterback might have to face. The reason why I have to have Fournette, I can't put Fournette, or have to put Fournette higher than Gurley and Bell, is because he is younger than both of those guys. But also I think he has a brighter future than both of those guys. And the reason why I have him so low is because I really just want to see him put up a monster season that, like some of the guys above him on this list already have managed to do in their career. So right now, Leonard Fournette, I confidently have him as my number 8 running back in the NFL. At number 7, I have Alvin Kamara. I sound like a broken record at this point, but 2019 was a down year for Kamara. That must have been the thing for a lot of running backs. You see it. There are some guys not on this list, like James Conner, not on this list, David Johnson, not on this list, and they had down years. Kamara is another one of those guys. Rushing the ball, Kamara was solid. He rushed for 797 yards and 5 touchdowns. The latter is a career low, but in terms of yards, it's kind of similar to his normal output that we've seen through his first 3 seasons. But where Kamara's production really dipped was as a pass catcher. He was targeted 97 times and caught 81 passes. 81 passes, that's the same number of passes he's caught in each of his first 2 seasons. But where the receiving game really took a hit was in the yards department. Kamara only went for 533 yards and caught 1 touchdown, both of which are career lows. And with a passing game as prolific as New Orleans, with one of the best quarterbacks under center in Drew Brees, and not many other options outside of Michael Thomas and wide receiver, you would think that Kamara would get plenty of opportunities as a pass catcher. And we've seen him put up really solid numbers, lighting up opposing defenses and keeping the Saints in games in the past. My question is, what exactly happened? I know he did deal with an injury that caused him to miss 2 games during the year. Did that injury linger throughout the rest of the year? Possibly, I don't know. I'm not in the Saints facility. But that could have had a huge factor in the production. I want to put Kamara higher because of his talent. But he is one of the best in the game. But all 6 of the guys ahead of him just straight up had better years than Kamara this past season. And barring an injury, I think Kamara could be a top 5 running back for the decade of the 2020s because he is that good. But as of right now, I can only put him as high as 7, given the year that he had. At number 6, we have Nick Chubb, the second of the Georgia Bulldogs on this list. Chubb made huge strides from year 1 to year 2. Chubb was given the 3rd most rushing opportunities amongst all NFL running backs with 298. The top 2 guys received 303 and 301 attempts respectively. So Chubb was right there in terms of production. But it doesn't really matter how many attempts you get. It matters what you do with those attempts. And Chubb took advantage of his opportunities and ran with it. No pun intended. Rushing for the 2nd most yards in the NFL with 1,494 yards. The leader was Derrick Henry, who ran for 1,540. So Chubb, once again, right there. So I think the opportunities for Chubb were very present. The Browns' offense was floundering, at least the passing offense, for most of the year. He ran for 8 touchdowns, tying him for ninth most in the NFL, which means that the Browns had to rely on him to win as many games as they did. There were times during the season where had Chubb not made a play, the Browns probably would not have won because Baker Mayfield did not play good at all. It was just a lot of stretches where the Cleveland passing game wasn't what it lived up to, and Chubb, he was better than advertised. You thought maybe once Kareem Hunt came back after his suspension, Chubb would take a dip. Did a little, but not as much as many people probably would have thought, and he thrived the whole year long. And another guy who I think in the decade of the 2020s could be one of the top 7 running backs consistently in the NFL. He has a bright future. Hopefully the Browns bring in a new head coach that recognizes this and utilizes Chubb to his full potential because he is one of the few running backs in the league that can be a focal point of the offense. Baker Mayfield, him, if Odell Beckham's still on the roster, Jarvis Landry's still on the roster, Kareem Hunt, all those guys have the opportunity to do some big, big things in Cleveland. Whoever is the new coach hopefully can bring the most out of all those guys, including Chubb especially. So right now I have to have Nick Chubb as my number 6 running back. At number 5, we have the NFL's rushing leader for 2019, Derrick Henry. As I mentioned, Henry was the leader in rushing yards amongst all NFL players, rushing for 1,540 yards. Henry also rushed for an NFL best 16 touchdowns, tying him with Aaron Jones. Henry has improved each year significantly since he entered the NFL, and as his workload has continued to increase, so has his production. Henry is a more traditional running back, runs north to south, will run right through defenders, not much of a pass catcher, but it seems the latter part is starting to change. He had his career highs in catches, targets, yards, and touchdowns this past season with 18, 24, 206, and 2 respectively. I mentioned that Chubb for the Browns was the best part of the offense for greater parts of the season. Henry was the entirety of the Titans offense for this entire season. It seemed like without Henry, Tennessee would probably not be in the playoffs. Maybe they might be given the play of Ryan Tannehill in a couple weeks, but Henry was just running all over defenses, and they had no answer to stop him. I said in my wildcard weekend preview video, if you watched it, that the only chance the Titans have at beating the Patriots in the playoffs is that if Derrick Henry goes off, because Tannehill or Mariota is not going to beat the Patriots D. Like, Tannehill had a great year so far since he took over the starting job in Tennessee, but he's making his first playoff start in his career, and I just can't see him going into Foxborough in a playoff game, who are pissed off the Patriots are after losing to the Miami Dolphins in Week 17, which forced them to play in this game, that they will allow the Titans passing game to go have any success at all. I think if the Titans are going to have a chance to win, it is going to be with Derrick Henry running the ball. Mike Vrabel has gotten the most out of his franchise running back. Here's hoping they can continue to do that for years to come. Derrick Henry, my number 5 running back in the NFL right now. At number 4, we have Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, without a doubt, played his best season of his career. For the first 14 games, he was healthy. Cook has had an injury history in the past during his career, and he did miss those last 2 games with a shoulder injury, but that should be no longer an issue as the Vikings head into the playoffs. In the games that Cook did play, he rushed for 1,135 yards, 13 touchdowns, good enough for 10th and 4th in each category, respectively. He also had a career year receiving the ball, earning 519 receiving yards and 53 catches. Cook was in the MVP conversation for the greater part of the first half of the season, and because of this, the Vikings did not lose more in the beginning of the year, because the passing game was not very good for the first 6 to 7 weeks. Once the passing game did turn around, though, Cook's production didn't decrease in the slightest. And the reason why I can't put Cook higher, though, is because the guys of him are just straight up better. Cook had a great year, but I want to see him continue to put up numbers that statistically are in the top 10 in the major rushing categories. And also because if I'm starting a team and knowing Cook's injury history, it has me a little weary. I'm not 100% sure if I want to build a team around a guy who I can't totally rely on to be there 14 to 16 games a year consistently. But as of right now, Dalvin Cook had a remarkable season, in my opinion. Number 4 in my top 10 running backs list. At number 3, probably my favorite running back in all of this list, partially because I'm a Giants fan, as you can see right over there. Yeah, close enough. It's Saquon Barkley. Barkley is probably the most talented player on this entire list. And it was a down year for Barkley, like a lot of guys, but that's partially due to the fact that he missed 3 games with an ankle sprain. In terms of the stats, though, he still put up solid numbers. 1,441 total yards, 1,003 rushing, 438 receiving to go along with 8 total touchdowns, 6 rushing and 2 receiving. Barkley is going to be the face of the NFL at the running back position, in my opinion, for the next 10 years, barring something crazy happening. And the Giants' offense is in a rebuilding mode. They got nice pieces with Barkley, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, and Evan Ingram. That core can do some big things, but it still needs work. And I think the Giants' offensive line stinks. If they want to have any chance of having success in the future, they need to build that offensive line. But even with those horrible offensive line, Barkley is still putting up really solid numbers, especially in his rookie year we saw. He nearly went for 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards. He was very close, and Barkley, he's just an immense talent out of Penn State, and I think whoever the new head coach is in New York, is that they have to utilize Barkley to the fullest potential, because Daniel Jones is not going to be a lighted up quarterback. At least in my opinion, as of right now, he might become that, but Saquon Barkley is the focal point of this offense. The concern I have with Barkley is that, which is why I did not put him in the top 2, as much as it hurt me to not to, is the injury. Does his ankle injury evolve into something else? The 2 guys ahead of Barkley have not had any real injury issues in their careers, so I can't put Barkley ahead of them. And also, they did have much better years this season than Barkley. But Barkley is going to have a remarkable career, as I've already said. He's my number 3 running back in the NFL. At numero dos, number 2, I have Ezekiel Elliott. Elliott has been extremely consistent his entire career. Aside from his 2017 season, where he only played 10 games, he has rushed for over 1,300 yards. He is a monster in the red zone with 40 rushing touchdowns in his career. And he got a huge payday from the Cowboys at the start of the season, and unlike LeSean Bell, he really did not disappoint. The Cowboys are going to be making changes as they have fired head coach Jason Garrett a couple days ago. This will ultimately most likely impact Elliott's production, as there will be a new scheme introduced. And I'm sure with Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper, that new coach is going to want to sling the ball around like Dallas Cowboys teams in the past. But if you're going to look to the past, you might want to focus more on the running game. In years past, the Cowboys have had remarkable running backs. Emmitt Smith comes to mind. Tony Dorsett comes to mind. Herschel Walker for a little bit had success as a Cowboy. So I think whoever the new head coach is should be like, we're going to go back to the Cowboys of old. We're going to ignore that this is a passing league now, and we're going to run the ball like crazy and play really good defense. Because they have already one of the top running backs in the league, and they got a really solid defense. And they have one of the best offensive lines in the entire NFL, barring that they stay healthy. The only thing with Elliott is that he is an immense talent, but he has had his history of off-the-field issues. Whether or not those are in his past, we will have to see. But as a football player, he is one of the best in the entire league. So Ezekiel Elliott, number 2 on my list. And at number 1, you have probably guessed it, it is Christian McCaffrey, CMC, as he is called. McCaffrey had arguably one of the best seasons ever by a running back, rushing for over 1,300 yards, 1,387 to be exact, and receiving 1,005. Rushing for 15 touchdowns and catching another 4 more. McCaffrey's rushing numbers in yards and touchdowns were both good for 3rd in the NFL. McCaffrey was and is the Panthers offense and will most likely be that for years to come. There were a couple question marks when McCaffrey came out of college at Stanford. He has silenced all the naysayers. He is, as a talent, probably the most talented player along with Saquon Barkley, because he can do it all. He could run, he could catch, he could do everything. He's the ultimate weapon, if you will. And with Cam Newton's future with the Panthers still unclear, if Newton is no longer with the team after the season, whoever the new head coach is really needs to make sure that they are going to have to rely on Christian McCaffrey, because the quarterback options on that roster are slim. Kyle Allen played okay, but when you have Christian McCaffrey in your backfield, you're going to have to use him a lot. And there are some interesting schemes you can draw up with that team, because they got a lot of speed on that roster. Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, McCaffrey, the Cat Pack they call themselves, which I think is a great name. I think CMC is going to really be relied upon on this new coaching regime, and I think he will see a lot of success in the future. And I think he's got an MVP down the road if he continues to put up monster numbers like this. So Christian McCaffrey, number 1 on my top 10 NFL running backs. So what do y'all think? Do you think I got it right? Do you like my list? There are a lot of guys that I said that I had to leave off. David Johnson, James Conner, Sony Michel, Joe Mixon, Melvin Gordon. The list goes on and on. I could probably have gone top 20 if I really wanted to, but this would have taken forever to make. But I like my top 10. Tell me what your top 10 is. Leave it down below in the comments. Stay tuned for my next video. Next week, I'm going to be working on top 10 wide receivers. I'll also be getting ready for the divisional round. As I'm recording this on Saturday, January 4th. The Texans game just ended, and that was a remarkable game. Texans game-winning field goal in overtime. I thought the Bills had it, and I was predicting them to win, neither here nor there. Texans played a remarkable game. But stay tuned for that, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.